Hi, welcome to my 5th classroom lesson. Today we'll be talking about textual analysis, particularly looking in one text. That text would be Catcher in the Rye, with main character Holden Caulfield, written by J.D. Salinger. In this lesson, we'll be discussing what textual analysis is and how to critically analyze the text that you are looking at. Well, textual analysis is looking for deeper meanings and further connections in a text. In this, that we mean, is there an understory or an under idea that the author is trying to portray through symbolism or character or personification of objects? For our lesson, we'll be looking at 4 specific tools. We won't be looking at all the tools for textual analysis. We'll be looking at nature, imagery, title significance, and color significance. If you're interested in other tools that there might be available for understanding text a little bit better, that will be in another lesson. But briefly to describe, it could include illusion, which could allude to other stories within the story, or supernatural figures like vampires and ghosts, and things such as that. But for us, we won't be looking at those. Nature. So weather is never just weather. Weather can signify change in plotline or character, or change the development of what was to what will be. Characters can be seen, their emotions can be seen through weather. For instance, a character that's wandering in what was once a clear field that suddenly becomes foggy can symbolize confusion, maybe misery, even isolation. Also, rain. If a character is standing in rain, that can symbolize purification or restoration. Also can resemble misery as well, similar to fog. You can see this in movies, specifically with fog, a character walking alone in the woods who's lost and starting to become confused. The fog will creep in and the confusion will become thicker and thicker when clarity and being able to see start to dissipate and the fog overwhelms the character. Rain, you can see this in a movie called V for Vendetta, in which Natalie Portman's character rains upon her when she comes out of her torture and torment. It purifies her. It transforms her from who she was to who she's going to be with clarity and baptismal, anew. Snow symbolizes clean, stark, severe, suffocating playfulness. In the text, in the Rye, we'll find Holden Caulfield and a lot of snow. This can symbolize the cleanliness, the purity, the harshness, the playfulness, all these conflictions that he has in his life, especially during a time of season. Seasons are very important. All these weather types come into the seasons and show what is happening within this stage of life, because seasons are considered stages of life. Spring is when things start to grow and they have youth and hope and renewed life. Think of little seedlings of flowers that suddenly start to bloom. Into the summer, they grow and have life. They're in their prime. Happiness, love, passion, liberty. A lot of adolescents find that summertime is a free time in which they can discover and explore. Fall, leaving from the prime of age to moving into fall, which would be middle age in the stages of life. And then anxiety, dread, stalling of life. Imagine a tree with leaves falling down, and those leaves are browning, and this tree is starting to become bare, but not quite yet, until you reach winter. Winter is death, old age, indifference. Death is, well, not death, but winter becomes death, and that all the things that happen in spring and summer are slowly becoming nothing again. They're disintegrating, degrading. For Holden Caulfield, you find him often in snow during winter, and this can symbolize that he is in this place in his life where death is so clear and that it's clean and it's real, but there's like a playfulness to like how you get to your death and how there are people who have died that it's not great. That's just weather, nature, seasons to look at. You can definitely look into far more things than that, but these are just what we'll be briefly looking at. We'll be diving more into it in class, and which we'll be seeing a lot more. We'll get into more text and see where those play. This is an example of Ernest Hemingway, his text in A Farewell to Arms, in which snow was significant. It was telling of a story about soldiers and the loss of fighting and how snow was that death. It was this blanket of loss. Another tool to look at is imagery. You're going to want to look back at character development lesson plan in which we talked and saw simile and metaphor. To review on that, simile is the comparison between two things using the words like or as. She is as white. She is as white as snow. You're talking about Snow White, where her complexion is very pale and translucent like snow. And then metaphor, the comparison between two things without the use of words like or as. She is snow. She is that cold, hard, fluffy, soft entity. She is that being. One thing that we haven't really looked into is personification. Personification is giving inanimate objects human-like qualities. For instance, if we were to give human-like qualities to trees, we could say trees are full of life, which they are, and you could describe that the tree itself is like a being, where it has the ability to move, not because it's blown one side to another, but because it chooses to. It chooses to hold these nests for birds, to have families. It chooses these things. Something similar would be to say that she is the moon and I am her stars, or I am her sun, and every night I must die so that she rises above. You're personifying that moon and the sun have these choices, that they have these abilities, which is not very realistic, but it's very deep and understanding for a character or for a reader to see and connect with. Title significance. Titles are very important. An author will choose a title specifically to draw points to or to have a connection for the reader. His Dark Materials is a good one. Why would he call his series His Dark Materials? The significance is talking about religion, and the dark materials is the ability to disconnect the soul from the human body and what that does to a person. Throughout the books, it's a trilogy, he dives into what that could be, what those resources are to destroy a person. Fault in Our Stars, we talk about cancer patients and how there's beauty and love and life and all these beautiful things, but there are downfalls to such things. Life has an end. Love has an end. These things are tragic and painful, and they're uncontrollable, but they're beautiful nonetheless. For J.D. Salinger, we'll be looking at his The Catcher in the Rye in the next slide, talking about the significance of title. We'll also want him to be looking at chapter titles, part titles, and headings, because these will give the reader an understanding of what it is I'm supposed to be looking for, what is a key point that the author is trying to make. For instance, for mystery novels, or not mystery novels again, but mystery novels and thrillers, there will be a chapter title describing an object, and it will give the reader an idea of, like, look for this object, or this is the object we are already looking for but haven't found yet. Or it might provide a clue to where that object is, or who the person of the mystery is looking for. Things like this will provide foreshadowing, will provide connections for the reader, and also give hints to deeper meaning. For Catcher in the Rye, the significance is that Holden Caulfield hears a song, and he thinks that it describes children falling off a cliff and that you need to catch them. In reality, the song is talking about two strangers meeting in a field for discrepancies and then parting ways as if nothing had happened. This is very clear about the text. Holden Caulfield's fighting this issue between growing up and being an adult and having these responsibilities and being a child and being innocent and being young and being what adolescence means. His sister tells him, it's not about catching children, but for Holden Caulfield, it is. The whole tale is about preserving this innocence and protecting that innocence, meanwhile struggling with becoming an adult and having to deal with no longer being innocent and having responsibilities and choices and knowing the difference between good and bad, knowing what's playful and not. So it's very important that we would look at something, especially a text as well developed as Catcher in the Rye, into things that are similar, because it also gives an understanding of what the author is trying to say. J.D. Salinger was a war veteran when he wrote this, and it was describing losing your innocence when you go to war, and how war is transforming you from youth to man, from child to an adult, and how you want to preserve the innocence, but you have to acknowledge that you can't necessarily do that with war. Color significance is another one that we'll be looking at. It'll be our last look at for this lesson. Color is very important. We look at color in that color has different types of meanings, and that those meanings can tell us a little bit more about what the author is actually saying. For instance, red is passion, blood, anger, danger, warning. But then green is youth, inexperience, envy, money, and good luck. We see these two colors repeatedly throughout Catcher in the Rye. Holden has his red hunting hat, and then the green room that he goes to. Other colors are black, yellow, purple, white, blue, orange, and brown. Black representing depression, formality. Yellow, cowardice, happiness, intelligence. Purple, royalty, ceremony, wisdom, pride. White, back to that snow image. Innocence, purity, peace, surrender. You can also think of dirty snow. Snow that's not so white and pure is the ruining of innocence and purity, the muddling of that. Blue is peace, sea, depression, calm, truth. Orange, desire, safety, energy, balance. Brown, organic, stable. Nature, poverty. These things are very key to a reader. If a color is repeated more than twice, 3 times the repetition, the reader should notice that these colors are significant, and they may be significant in different ways, but that they represent something deeper. Color significance in Catcher in the Rye. One is looking at Holden's red hunting hat. He puts it on when he thinks of his siblings. For him, his siblings have red hair. This would recognize his love and passion for them, but also this fear of their innocence and their youth. We talk about the coloring of whenever he's putting it on, he's in the snow or he's walking through this field of winter, and that stark contrast of this white serene scene with this red, blood red hat walking through. It's taking this purity and innocence, this newness and the death of something, and mourning of it as he walks through. This is just one example of how red plays into Holden Caulfield's world in Catcher in the Rye. To briefly go over, we talked about nature, title significance, color significance. We briefly discussed imagery, personification, bringing human-like qualities to inanimate objects. These will help develop your narratives, as well as dive into narratives deeply, discussing what those mean and how they work into this idea that the author is trying to portray. If you have any questions, please let me know. We'll be in class discussing this further. We'll be actually marking down in our books and writing little notes for ourselves. Excuse me. And we'll also be discussing how this will play into your own narratives. We will have already looked at your character development, your descriptive language, and these tools for text analysis will work well with all those other things in order to create a very enriched